Okay, I pushed the button. Takes a second, there's a slight delay, and then we should be good to go. We're live. So, I hope it's going to take a second for people to kind of tune on because we're late, but I hope that everybody caught that shit fest.
Hey everybody! Yeah, I didn't know they were going to redo the Bozo show.
Well, I tell you what. To start off, for people that didn't see it or are currently watching, I know there was some back and forth about whether or not it aired on the West Coast. I had a lot of people tell me that it didn't air on the West Coast. So it did air in the.
No, it doesn't come on until 8 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast. Anybody on the West Coast still hasn't seen it yet.
But yeah, they basically Ice-T said that Reggie Wright Jr. was dry snitching, and our homeboy Rel from 313 also said that he just put a video out to say that. I'm just making sure we're on there, boss. Okay, we got 54 people on here. All right, guys. Because it hasn't aired on the West Coast yet, I'm gonna go ahead and play some clips for you guys that didn't see it, including some of the people that are on here right now. So without any further ado, I cherry picked some segments that I think were important, and I'm gonna go ahead and start off with Randall Sullivan's interview. So bear with us. We appreciate you guys being here. Just give me 1 second and we'll get this going. I apologize for starting late, everybody. I was rushing pretty hard to get this up and running. So here we go. What the fuck? All right, now that was the segment with Randall Sullivan. Up next is Reggie Wright Jr., which I'm going to show you guys in a second. I need to block it off for copyright reasons. And I will get into what they did and said about Tupac, the quad shooting. I just want to catch up with basically what they were doing, and I really want, just for everybody's viewing benefit, to have everybody watch Reggie Wright lie his ass off. Do you have any comments on the segment we just seen? You know Randall Sullivan, right, RJ?
Oh yeah, Randall Sullivan and I talk all the time. Not as much as I'd like to, but we catch each other, you know, as often as we can. Randall Sullivan's just a great guy, and the one thing I really like about him is he's able to take a lot of complicated issues and he just distills them down to simple terms. He's been on this for a long time. I mean, he's you know, Rolling Stone published New York Times bestseller. I mean, this guy, you know, he really knows his shit, and I have a great admiration for him. The last time I talked to Randy, I mean, we've emailed back and forth, but the last time I sat down and talked to Randy, I had lunch with him about maybe 6 weeks ago up in Portland, and we're supposed to get back together again and exchange some more information. But you know, clearly a huge respect for him, you know, and you know, continuing the work that Russell did, and Randy and I have talked a lot about Russell and that. But yeah, Randy's a good dude, right on the money. There had been talk originally. I was supposed to interview for the Fox show, and it didn't work out, unfortunately. But Randy was gonna also work with me on the Fox show, you know, to kind of hand it off. But again, they only have so long to tell a story and so many people to tell it. So you know, it's kind of why, you know, people go. And Randy, I could have said it better than the way Randy said it himself. So you know, there's really no need to say the same thing twice.
All right, and this is my favorite part of the show, and I really didn't like the show. I want to tell people right now, but one of my favorite parts of the show is what we are going to show next, which is Reggie Wright Jr. So just bear with me 1 second. And we're back.
Oh my God!
Can you believe that?
Hold on, I gotta turn this thing off. Okay, you know, for all of you who know it's 7:30 on the West Coast, 8 o'clock. I'm watching this show again because I deserve a good laugh here. Oh my God. Okay. Well, I was going to say Susan Constantine, our analyst that does the fraud and the lie detection. She could look at this and have a field day, dude. Anybody could look at this one and have a field day, and the way that they cut it is clear to everybody that if there was a credibility line, like people that were in line for credibility, he'd be at the end of the line. So,
Oh,
dude, oh wow.
Ice T straight up says that, yeah, we call that dry snitching. That he was dry snitching.
Well, I mean, the important question here was, I mean, he asked him, why would Suge want Biggie killed? Because if Orlando Anderson, it was a random gang thing, and Orlando Anderson killed, it wasn't Puffy, but it was Orlando Anderson that killed, it was a random gang thing. What benefit would Suge Knight have for wanting to kill Biggie? I mean, it doesn't, that only works if it's Puffy to Suge Knight and Biggie to Tupac. Then you've got fair trade, fair exchange, one for one, eye for an eye. But since they knocked that whole Puffy thing clear out of the blue, and now it's Orlando Anderson that did it, they're absolutely right. Okay, so now you got the whole Orlando Anderson. What reason would Suge Knight have for killing Biggie? Yeah, okay, there you go.
And why is he trying to? Well, I'm not here to validate the book. You're being interviewed because you co-signed the book and you're in the documentary. What are you talking about, Reggie?
Well, there's another thing here too that really gets me is the fact that, okay, dude, you've had 20 years. That was 1997. You are Suge Knight's #1 guy, which makes you an accomplice after the fact in 99 out of 100 situations. You're an accomplice. You're the head of his security. You're the one who shares all the secrets with him, and you know what's going on. So, A, that's the first thing. But B, you've had 20 years to figure out and cook up a reason why Suge Knight wanted to kill Biggie. And 20 years later, the best you come up with is Gomer Pyle. Oh, what? I don't know. Oh, what do I know? I've seen Muppets perform better. Okay, honestly.
Well, I mean, and in order to save the credibility of this show and Reggie Wright Jr., they did attempt to talk to Greg Kading. Would you like to see that clip? It's a short clip. Would you like to see that one?
What is it now?
I got a clip of them trying to get a hold of Greg Kading because Greg Kading was supposed to do the show.
Would you like well, hang on to that for a minute because everybody's talking about the gun right now. Let's just talk about the gun for 2 seconds, okay? Yeah, I read this in Tim Brennan's book about the pit bull that was running around with the gun that was in the backyard. And, of course, we talk about this in Battle for Compton. We talk about this. Tim Brennan, maybe he's living off of his lottery winnings because he's the luckiest man on the planet that he identified Orlando Anderson when they did the big gang raid. He was the only one that personally found Orlando Anderson. He personally brought it in. He's the one who wrote the affidavit with all the misstated facts in it and everything else. And now he's the one who comes up with the gun out of 3,000 guns that are salvaged. He just randomly pulls some Glock out of his ass and it happens to match the ballistics. I mean, my God. He goes on a raid. They have 22 different law enforcement agencies going on a raid to arrest all these people at all these different gang sweep houses. And out of the hundreds of cops that are involved, Tim Brennan is the one who personally brings Orlando Anderson in. Like he's got this. You ever seen those water diviners? Those people that have the water divining rods that they can try to find water out. They water out like this. Tim Brennan must have an Orlando Anderson divining rod. That he's the guy who single-handedly brought this whole thing around, and he's the one who single-handedly out of 3,000 guns that they brought in, he ballistic just pulls a Glock. Oh, hey, look at this Glock. Oh, didn't Tupac get shot with the Glock? Let's throw it in there. 1 out of 3,000, guys. If I told you you had a 1 in 3,000 chance of doing anything, would you believe it? I mean, come on.
Well, you have a 1 in 6 chance of winning a free ticket on a scratch-off. How often does that happen?
Oh, there you go. Okay. And, but you got to 1 in 3,000 shot at something, okay?
He also said it was found the day after Orlando Anderson was killed.
Yeah, it just so happens, yeah. Here we go again. Okay, yeah. So, Gunsmoke to Dawn. Yes, I like the fact that they didn't show Greg Kading's picture on the. They just had like this missing head, this empty space, like insert face later. I mean, it's not like he's a public figure, and if they just called me out and given him my picture of him from the assassination screenings, I'd have just given that one for free. but they didn't like it, and there was a lot of ways they were going to go with this documentary. They just didn't go with it.
Now, I tell you what, as a Tupac fan, listen, if this was a standalone documentary on the Biggie killing, it would have been a good show. But what they did to Tupac, and I will get to this later because RJ is going to watch this thing on the West Coast, and I'll talk to you guys a bit later. What they did to Tupac is almost like they were just attaching Tupac's name to this to put out a Biggie documentary. Because what they did to Tupac was horrible. It was horrible. But just for shits and giggles, it's only a few seconds. Let's watch them try to get a hold of Greg. And we're back. That was the extent of Greg Kading's appearance on the show.
There's 3 books, motherfucker.
Right? But Greg Kading lawyered up. Why would Greg Kading lawyer up?
Because he's got a TV show he's trying to protect. I mean, that's my take on it. You know, that their lawyers at Universal are telling him not to say anything about anything, and not to tie himself up with a documentary that's got Reggie Wright being interviewed. That's the thing. Reggie Wright's still co-signing Greg Kading's book. You know, Reggie Wright and Greg Kading. Reggie Wright still wants to keep that close to Greg Kading. You know, he doesn't want to sever those ties that bind. You know, because he's trying to get whatever credibility he can get off of Greg Kading, and the two of them are just like this. And so they're going, can't get him. And they keep getting back together again. And it's sad to see that, because you got Reggie sitting there going, "Oh, go follow the book. Oh, go follow the book." Motherfucker, you can't come up with your own story about this. You're the head of security for Death Row Records, and the best you come up with on your version of what happened in 1997 is go read Greg Kading's book? What?
How do you name... Wait, I want to know, and I know I've said this before, but okay, you're dry snitching on Suge, and you're saying Suge had this done.
Dry snitching, dry humping is more the word.
But who was visiting Suge in jail? Who was handling all the money, Reggie?
Oh, yeah. You know, you go back to the McPherson testimony. McPherson's were the attorneys for Suge Knight and were handling all of Suge Knight's affairs after David Kenner got sick and didn't want to do it anymore. And Reggie's running back and forth and handling all the affairs for Death Row Records. He's handling all the affairs. Suge gave him an $8 million fucking building. Okay, gave him an $8 million building to hold on, signed the deed to an $8 million building over to Reggie, and Reggie's going to do the shucks. I mean, I'm sorry, but I didn't think I'd ever in this day and age see I was the boss. I don't know anything about it. I never thought I would see that in this day and age from anybody. Period.
And not just an $8 million building, an $8 million building in the most prime real estate area of the country. It doesn't get no more better than that. But that's the clips I have. I have the Brennan clip, but I'm gonna skirt away from that, only because I don't want this thing taken down midstream. But yeah, that's what we got. I've got a couple of notes of what they said about Tupac. Unless you had some more to say about what's going on with Greg and Reggie, RJ.
What now? Say what? You want me to talk more about Greg and Reggie?
No, I was just asking if you had more.
Reunited and it feels so good. Reunited, Reggie's got you understood. Okay, so I can't sing, but anyway, at the end of the day, I like to see how Reggie is still trying to endorse Greg Kading when Greg Kading wants absolutely nothing to do with Reggie at this point. It's so funny and it's so sad. You know, it's just so sad.
I do like the way that they portrayed Randall Sullivan. I like the way that they held up Russell Poole and with integrity. I believe Greg Kading gave him plenty of leeway to do that by just not fucking showing up. And you notice that they were set up, they were ready to go. So that was a last minute thing by Greg. Because apparently he wanted to go on there and talk, but someone shut him up real quick.
No, here's the thing about it. Greg Kading got on there and he made it a condition that they not talk to me. They could have interviewed me, but every interview Greg Kading does, he makes it specific to the request that they don't interview me. I could have been in on that show and doing that, but when they thought they had him, he made it conditional that they not have me. And by the way, Greg Kading not showing up for something is no news to me because we had Frank and I had him subpoenaed to show up in court to testify against Reggie for Frank Alexander, and Greg Kading stood us up and never showed and made a bunch of bullshit excuses why he never showed up in court. I got all the documents for that. So this guy playing ghost on the whole thing and ghosting him, man, that's nothing unusual. This cat will get out of shit and hide behind his lawyers and hide behind anything he can to get out of shit. So, that's no news to me. That shit was happening 10 years ago.
And I tell you what, about the Tupac thing. I mean, they do a recreation. They have a police officer shooting into the car. They got a marksman. And I noticed a nice little quote about the trajectory that I had only heard from one other person, which is you. Which some of those gunshots were fired on the approach, and some of those gunshots were fired as they were fleeing. That throws a monkey wrench in anybody saying that someone got out of the car talking shit. It throws a monkey wrench in someone saying that they just slightly pulled up, arm come out of the window. That arm, I'm not saying that the arm didn't come out of the window, but that arm came out of the window on the pull-up and when they were leaving. But what I want to say is this, that they screwed up on majorly. They put the Sebring in the turn lane, and then they had the Cadillac follow the Sebring. And as they had the Sebring turn off before the shooting, and then they interviewed the women, and they were eyewitnesses.
Yeah, and apparently they said that they were behind the shooter's car now. So suddenly they've gone to being on one side of Suge Knight to being on the other side of Suge Knight. Now they're behind the
no, they were in front of the shooter's
they're
car.
in front. No, now they're in front of the shooter's car. Okay, so yes, so they made a right-hand turn to get out of the way of the shooters because they were stopped, and of course the shooters just started shooting, and they ducked in the car according to their whatever testimony they gave the last time. They ducked. So how did you duck and get out of the way for a car to make that? I mean, nobody has said anything like that before. This is just craziness.
Yeah, another one of their points that I just want to say this because I know that it's on everybody's mind. First of all, they shouldn't have included Tupac because they spent the first half an hour of the show on the quad incident. Now, it does seem to be common, consensus that Tupac at least fired off one shot as he was reaching for his gun. But they come with a magic bullet theory. According to this special and this poorly produced documentary, this is what they say. One bullet that Tupac fired off hit him, the guy next to him, bounced around in an elevator, and he was not shot in the head, but yet he was pistol whipped, and there was only one shot fired. And not 15 minutes into the show, they have Funkmaster Flex in there talking about Tupac.
So I got to tell you, I mean, I didn't think they were going to put out Disneyland all over again as a TV show, but this one's about as good. This is definitely Fantasyland. I'll give them that. Where they're coming up with all this stuff, like somebody said, where's Eric B. been all these years? Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about the Eric B. quote. What Eric B. said is when Tupac got to the hospital in Vegas. Now, Eric B. is a New York cat. He said when Tupac got to the hospital in Vegas, he said to the doctors, "I know I'm going to die. Won't you just let me die?" When has that ever been said in the last 21 years?
Well, I got that same thing about, suddenly Yo-Yo's coming out saying that he's been saying stuff and he was awake and he was around. We're getting this whole new story. This is kind of like the second wave of rewriting the Bible. I mean, for 20 years, all this information has been out there. People have said that, he was unconscious and this. And, you get one clip from the guy at the hospital saying that Tupac was in and out of consciousness. I guess that opens up the floodgates for people to be saying now, Suge Knight, oh, we were laughing and joking. Well, next thing you know, somebody's going to be saying they were playing canasta with Tupac. The next day they're going to be playing fucking blackjack with Tupac in the hospital. Oh, yeah, we was down in the commissary. We were down in the lunch hall down there having a taco together. And Tupac and I were playing cards. We were playing canasta, and he won. you know, or Pac liked to shoot craps, so they were shooting craps downstairs. You know, Tupac got out of his hospital bed and drug himself, wheeled his IV tubes down to the cafeteria, and they were playing craps down in the cafeteria. I mean, guys, how stupid is this gonna get before the lunatics are running the asylum? I mean, really.
Yeah, and this whole beginning of the show, the first hour of the show, is nothing but East Coast people talking bad about Tupac. Like I said before, I'm disappointed in Ice-T. I'm disappointed in Fox. The only redeeming quality of this documentary was the last part where you get to watch Reggie Wright lie and Greg Kading ghost. And I hope that that sends a strong message to everybody. You see, Murder Rap, they're touting it, they're holding it up, but they won't even show up to defend it.
Hey, MacArthur Productions, I'm not saying anything about, you know, that Yo-Yo's right or wrong, and she was there. Well, you know, there was a lot of people that were there, but there's been a lot of different stories from people that were there. I'm not saying she is or isn't saying anything, but suddenly now, 20 years later, suddenly people are talking, telling all their stories. Why now? Was there some magic bell at 20 years that people, you know, decided they want to start talking about this? Or, you know, what was not relevant 20 years ago? I mean, we've been scratching at the post, and I mean this. We've been scratching at the post for 20 years trying to solve a fucking murder. And these people are running around holding and withholding information for all these years. And again, like I said, I'm not saying she's not saying there, but, you know, I'm sorry, where were all these people 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago when Assassination came out? Where were all of these people then with all of these tidbits of knowledge in that? I mean, why now? Is people are afraid to talk? Why? Is because Reggie's got an ankle bracelet on? Now suddenly people aren't afraid to talk anymore? I mean, is that what this is? I mean, I'll just say the words. Because like I said, I mean, there's a lot of people that like these, and I'm not here to call anybody a liar. But what I will say is if you have information that's pertinent to an investigation and you just decide to sit on it for 20 years and then you decide you're going to put something out like it means something, you know, where the hell were you 20 years ago? Maybe you could have helped actually put somebody in jail or actually achieve some real justice in this. So, you know, I'm sorry, but that's where I stand, you know. These people coming out and saying all this bullshit 20 years later and all this and all these wild stories, because that's what they are. They're wild stories. I mean, you know, Suge Knight coming out saying that Tupac, we were laughing and joking. Yeah, I'm sure we were laughing about how much blood you were losing. You know, I lost a lung. How funny is that? You know, I can't breathe. My heart stopped 3 times. That's a fucking joke, isn't it? Come on.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
and that comes on the heels. I think people forget that 3 years ago, Suge Knight was saying that Tupac handed him the death row chain when he was in the ambulance. And we all know that Tupac wasn't wearing the death row chain in the ambulance. And
yeah, I mean, you know,
to answer Mike, you didn't miss anything unless you're interested in the Biggie case. If you're interested in the Biggie case, go ahead and watch this. But if you're a Tupac fan like I am, oh, this was blasphemy. This was the worst thing I've ever seen.
well, you know, the end of the day, I mean, yeah, I mean, big ups to everybody that said it's convenient how they didn't mention Battle for Compton or they didn't mention the patents or anything like that. You know, they're not going to go down that path because they have more people like a Tim Brennan and a Bobby Ladd for all the credibility they bring to the fucking table. And, you know, Bobby Ladd shot somebody in the back, didn't he? I mean, he was a cop that shot somebody in the back. I mean, you know, please. I mean, you know, they bring these guys up there like they got some sort of damn credibility in all this. I mean, you know, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But let's put all the playing cards out on the table and say there's been 2 books that have been written. Well, you know, and sorry for us that we didn't have the publicity to get that copy of the book out there that 187 was out there, and it must. But, you know, these books are contradictory. Of course they're contradictory. You've got Bobby Ladd and Tim Brennan putting out the same bullshit theory that they've been putting out since the day that Tim Brennan put out the Tim Brennan affidavit. Nothing has changed. And, of course, they're going to get on an interview and say the exact same thing they've been saying before. But, you know, I mean, like I said before, 3,000 guns come in and Tim Brennan finds the magic weapon. Wow. I mean, like I said,
I've got the golden Glock. I've got the golden Glock.
Yeah, I got the golden Glock. Yeah, where's fucking Willy Wonka when you need him? You know.
Where's the gun now,
I got
then?
the golden Glock. What's that?
Where's the gun now, then? Bobby Ladd? I mean, where's it at?
Well, that's the other thing, too. Yeah, if ATF has the gun and they tested the gun for it, where'd it go after the ATF was done with it? Because if he knows that much, knows that the ATF in Vegas says it wasn't a match and that, he could at least say where the gun last ended up. and somehow hasn't magically disappeared, I guess. You know, we should ask Reggie about that.
That he might not know, boss.
Let's see here.
And another thing that they did in this documentary is they inadvertently, because it's the only way that they addressed any other theory was the dead theory, which is that Suge Knight set it up and he was sitting in the car. But even then, they prove without a shadow of a doubt that both men were targets. With their police shooter, they go on to prove that it was a hit on both those guys.
Hey, Shirley Miller said, I have a question. If Tupac was alive, welcome to the show, Shirley. If Tupac was alive, how much would he gain back in royalties? Give a round about money guess. Well, we know with Biggie Smalls, it was about $500 million. You know, it could be rounded up to, you know, let's say $1 billion in money that was adjusted for today's revenue, because you're talking about money 20 years ago and what it would be worth now. But you're talking over $1 billion. I mean, you look at whatever Puffy made for himself with the clothing lines and all that. You know, I think that Tupac had every bit and every shot of doing the same thing. He was getting into being acting. You know, he could have been making $15-20 million a motion picture doing acting work. So, you know, again, it just depends on what the trajectory was. But an album sales by itself, I mean, I would say probably $1 billion, easy.
So the show does start on the West Coast in 6 minutes for those who didn't get to see this piece of garbage. And I would humbly ask all my YouTube subs and viewers, if you see something you don't like about Tupac, take it to Twitter. Let them know. Because I tell you what, this was a disgrace what they did to Tupac. I watched the first hour of this documentary pissed. I was pissed. It's like they were trying to rewrite history and at the same time have a slew of East Coast people just tarnish Tupac's name, drag it through the mud. And like I said earlier, if this would have just been about the Biggie case, it would have been a good documentary. But I think they attached Tupac's name to it just to get viewers.
Yeah, we're, again, and I think what I'd like to do is I'm going to step out because I am going to watch this again, because I'd like to see the show myself. Why don't we get together? Let's do a show. You want to do it Tuesday? You want to do a show Tuesday, Jess?
Yes, and I wanted to let all my subs and viewers know that we're going to move the live format. I was going to start doing it on Tuesdays because on Sundays we're against NFL, wrestling comes on, Power comes on, specials like this come on. So we're constantly fighting the ratings battle here, and Tuesday seems to pop off. So if it's all right with everybody, we're going to go ahead and stream live on Tuesdays now at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Guys, take care. I'm gonna go catch the show. Peace. Thanks for tuning into the show, man. We love y'all. Just keep it on this channel and keep it locked for the real. That's what you're gonna get. You get the fucking real. That's it.
Absolutely, and trust me, take your outrage to Twitter, guys. You're gonna be pissed on the West Coast. Thank you for being on, RJ, and I'll see everybody later.
Peace out, home.
All right, boss.